So one of the things that we need to think about with chair-based exercise is why. Why do we bother to do it? And it's one of those strange questions, really, because most people try and avoid exercise as if their life depended on it. And it's one of those things that we physically, as human beings, need to do. We need to be mobile, we need to use our bodies. And if you don't use the body, it wastes away. So some of the effects that happen with aging, if they're left unchecked, are muscle wastage, and that's down to hormonal changes in your system. With muscle wastage, there's a loss in a predominant type of fibre, which is your fast twitch fibres, and you end up with something called sarcopenia, which is a sort of a general wastage of muscle fibres and breakdown of the muscle tissue. With that, you end up with problems, funny enough, with your sight, which is half the problems, because there's muscles on either side of the eye that help focusing, or help focus when you look at objects. You also start to have balance problems. So that's a combination of muscle wastage, but it's also to do with internal mechanisms, something called proprioception, which is basically you mentally knowing where your body is in space. And that will affect two types of balance. One of them for older people isn't such an issue, one of them is. The first one is static balance, which is standing on one leg. And it's lovely to be able to do it, but it doesn't serve much purpose in life. It has no functional purpose. The second is something called dynamic balance, which is just a term that means moving. So getting out of a chair, going upstairs, coming downstairs, walking are all examples of dynamic balance. And that's very useful in day-to-day life. Then we have stiffening of joints and loss of range of movement. So if you don't move a muscle, or the muscles and connective tissue for a full range of movement, they shorten. So if you've ever been in a plaster after you've broken something and the plaster comes off, after 4, 5, 6 weeks, you'll realise that the range of movement's gone out of the joints that the plaster covered, and you have to build that back up. So there's 2 points there. Is one, that it goes very quickly, and the other is that you can build that back up. You can return it, rehab it back to what it was before. You've got a general drying out of connective tissue, and basically you end up with more connective tissue in ratio to muscle if you allow muscle mass to waste away. You have a loss in heart and lung function. So the heart is a muscle, so that's part of the process, is the muscle wastage if you don't use it. The diaphragm itself basically is a muscle that draws the lungs down. So again, if you don't use both of those muscles, they'll weaken. The ability to carry oxygen around the system starts to break down if you're not using the functions that go with that. So part of it is, if you train a muscle, you get more veins and vessels running through it, which means it oxygenates more efficiently, and that will decrease with inactivity as you grow older if you don't physically do something. A lot of the things that we see as effects of old age aren't actually old age, they're actually effects of inactivity. Pelvic floor, continence problems increase, sleep disturbances increase, hair redistribution. So hair vanishes from certain parts of your body and reappears on others. So for men it's a receding hairline, and ears that ears that sort of bush out with hair and nostrils. Women don't escape the redistribution of hair. They tend to get more facial hair, funny enough. Not funny if it's happening to you. More chronic conditions. So you tend to have more illnesses that are long term. And with all that, inactivity is actually almost wedged home by a fear of actually injuring yourself or doing something to yourself, which makes you less mobile and take less risks, which means that you become more inactive, which means that you have a higher chance of injuring yourself. So, fine control of the muscle also goes. So fine motor movement starts to break down. If you don't use it, if you do use it, you can hold on to it for a longer period of time. The magic point, funny enough, is they call something called the terminal drop. There's two terminal drops. One's to do when you're basically coming up to end of life. And the other one is this magic figure where you just start going to the doctor more often with more conditions. And that's supposedly about 73 on average. So I hope that little batch has cheered you up some, because whenever I run it on the course, it always makes people miserable as sin. And it just gives you an outlook into why we're exercising people. A lot of what I've spoken about is definitely slowed down by physical activity. It's not reversible. So as I look into the camera, I just see wrinkles and grey hairs. And 15 years ago, there wasn't as many. And I can keep myself relatively fit. I've still got a good heart rate. I can still lift a reasonable amount. I can move about all right. But I can't be the man I was 25 years ago. That's not a physical possibility. So, bring the joys of physical activity to your people. Enough said anyway. Bye-bye.